So let's unpick the election result and the job ahead of an invigorated Labor Party as it commits to its pre-election promises and its key policies. Among those policies, to expand more free Medicare visits, to create a 24/7 emergency healthline service, tax cuts that are worth $17 billion over the next 4 years, including a $1,000 instant tax deduction. There's also the commitment to allow first home buyers to get a mortgage with just a 5% deposit by underwriting the lenders, to cut student debts by 20% and to enshrine free TAFE. That's just the start. It all adds up to more than $35 billion. But the government did say that it will pay for this by cutting the use of consultants and also by increasing the price of overseas student visa applications. So let's bring in here perhaps Australia's most experienced budget scrutiniser, independent economist Chris Richardson. Chris, many thanks for your time today. The question is whether this is too big a job for a new government or whether now, with a very clear mandate, it's got a pretty clear runway to enact those policies.
And you gave the exact figures, 35, perhaps $36 billion over the next 4 years. But remember, the amount of money flowing into and out of Canberra over those 4 years will be $6.4 trillion. Or in other words, the net extra cost for Australians to pay for our government is just over 0.5%. So we haven't actually notably moved the dial. And in one sense, that's good news. We already had deficits. In another sense, it's bad news. We have challenges and we're not really taking them on.
Okay, so the one thing that I felt was missing in the whole election campaign was a real agenda for economic growth. There's aspirations, there's hope that we get growth, but the question is where that growth is coming from is a big question mark for Australia right now.
Yeah, it's mostly fingers crossed. You'll remember that as workers here in Australia, we are equally effective today as we were in 2016. That is part of the reason why our incomes have gone nowhere. If you go back a decade, Australian average disposable incomes, inflation adjusted, our living standards, up 1.5% over the last decade. The average rich country, the average across the OECD, 22%. They're travelling 15 times faster than we are. And it would seem we're not trying to catch up. There's no particular plan.
Okay, so the one plan is to have a lot of people in jobs because that means that the government gets significant amounts of PAYG taxpayer income, which means that they can then start to fund this thing. They also, through inflation, get bracket creep, which means that they get more. The question of what they do with that money and whether that is productive and competitive for Australia as a global nation, that is the big question mark, I would say.
Yeah, our problems in the budget have been building up over decades. Nobody's really substantially moved the dial on our tax system for a very long time, basically since the GST. We have a bunch of terrible taxes, things that need to be substantially better. You look at our spending, lots of it is stupid. Lots of it is almost completely wasted. But so was the election campaign. It was also wasted. These things weren't addressed, nor was the challenge of a more volatile world. The implications, it's not the tariffs, it's the cost of the chaos as the Trump administration keeps changing its mind and its dollars around tariffs. That is a complication for the world. And the geopolitics of what's going on, that combination may mean a weaker economy and yet a greater need for us to spend on defence.
Okay, so then during this election campaign, the ratings agency S&P Global entered and gave a warning about the future of Australia's AAA credit rating. Now, that was dismissed by the Treasurer, dismissed by the Finance Minister, dismissed by the Prime Minister. But in reality, it is a genuine warning to Australia and its budget position right now.
Yeah, we have ridden on our luck for a very, very long period of time. We have not been well run or well managed. We have been supremely lucky. Now, luck's a fortune, and it gives us very low debt and upcoming deficits compared to what you're seeing in much of the world. We can't, however, assume that the luck lasts. As a nation, we rely on China for prosperity and the US for security. And riding those two horses at the same time is getting harder and harder and may be impossible to do relatively sooner rather than later.
Always good to have you in the program. Many thanks for your insight. Have a great day.
Thanks, Ross.